This is Glenn Pendlay with the Weightlifting Podcast, or the Weightlifting Scoop Podcast, excuse me. We're down here in Australia. I'm with Ben Tily and Travis Cooper. We've had a quite eventful couple of days here in Australia. I'm trying to think how I should start this, but I think just start with we left home on Wednesday morning for a one-day seminar in Sydney. Nice drive down, although we were in the muscle driver van instead of Ben's player car, his BMW something or other. So the van doesn't have a back seat, and it's just got a front seat that's not really big enough for me and Travis Cooper in the middle and Ben driving. It's about 2/3 as big as it should be to handle all of us three in the front. But we made it. We were a little squished. Travis kept telling me to scoot over. I said the only way I could scoot over anymore is if I lost weight, which wasn't going to happen on that trip. We did our seminar, which went really well. And then the plan was to take off from the seminar and go ahead and drive down here to Melbourne, which we're in Melbourne right now. So we set out Wednesday evening to drive to Melbourne, and I knew that Melbourne had to be 8 or 9 hours away because Ben earlier in the week had went from Gosford down to Melbourne and back in 18 hours. So, I'm thinking we drive maybe 3 hours tonight, and then we'll go ahead and drive down there on Thursday and have a kind of a free day before we did our seminar in Melbourne Saturday and Sunday. But that was not to be. Because the person in charge of booking the hotel reservations was Simone, Ben's lovely wife, and she had different ideas, much different ideas as it turned out. 9 hours of driving time was not in our future, far from it. So we started off towards Melbourne, and then at some place we kind of veered off. And not being from Australia or knowing the roads at all, they all have very funny names down here. It's not like, Highway 81 or like, Interstate. What's an Interstate? Interstate 35. I don't know, whatever. They're all like M1 or F3 or something. Who knows? But, I wasn't looking at a map and I didn't realize that we were that far off course, but we had a hotel that was booked for us in a place called Eden. I suppose Eden was a nice place. It turned out to be pretty nice, but what I was thinking is, come on, man. I know I like my hometown too, but I didn't go naming it Eden or anything. People are a little full of themselves down there. But anyways, we got to a place. What was the road that we were on, Ben?
I don't know what the name of the road was. Like I said, I've seen a lot of places I've never seen before in Australia. I've lived here for 15 years. We saw some weird and wonderful. We saw a lot of. It was just a
lot of dead kangaroos we saw.
Yeah, there was a lot of dead ones. We saw quite a lot of alive ones as well. There was that big one when we got onto that last road that we thought was Imlay Road. That was what it was called.
Yeah. Dead wombats, too.
Yeah.
One live wombat. Yeah. We did see one huge kangaroo. He was hopping away, and I thought he might just turn around and kick our ass. He was big. Very big. But we turned onto this little road that was supposed to go to a hotel in a quaint little town called Eden. And it was not really on the way to Melbourne. We had driven a lot of hours out of our way to get to this little hotel that had been booked for us. And the last road supposedly to get to the town and the hotel was called Imlow Road. And we were on Imlow Road for over an hour. And during that time, we did not ever meet another car. We didn't see anybody. We saw no lights that might have, told us there was civilization anywhere about. And Travis, was that not the creepiest forest that you've ever been in your life?
Yeah, at a certain point, we stopped even seeing kangaroos, so we thought we were going to die for sure.
Well, this was not just any. First off, this is not a highway. I think back in like Kansas, they might have called it a farm road. It's like a blacktop road. that's not quite wide enough to be actually two-laned. There's no shoulder whatsoever. You're driving with the your tire, less than a foot away from the edge of the asphalt, and it's curvy, and it really was spooky. I mean, I've never seen a spookier looking forest that we were driving through. I was frankly a little nervous.
The thing that really got us is we could almost see it coming down the road. This fog set in on us, and visibility, could barely see anything, except for the dark trees either side of us, the odd shape of a kangaroo. And yeah, I think numerous times we looked at each other and, we were convinced we weren't getting out of there alive.
Yeah, that looked like exactly the situation that you may not come out alive. Because the forest was not just trees and stuff, but there were a ton of like dead trees and just ground brush. And these huge dead trees laying all over the place, propped up against each other, just lots and lots of weird shapes, especially when there's no lights anywhere. Not lights of oncoming cars kind of illuminate what's around you or anything like that. So, it definitely was, I'll say this, if there were monsters, that would have been the type of forest they came out of. Anything supernatural, like witches or whatever, anything that's going to eat you up and you're never going to get away. That was the forest they're in.
Yeah, and I think I got to put my hand up. It was kind of my fault. I put there was 2 Imlay streets, and I had the wrong one pumped in. Luckily, it was relatively close. We got to the end of the road. It was like 60, 70 kilometers until we got to the end of it. And my sat nav had gone out because there was no service. There was nothing. And we eventually got the correct address in, and we realized, just by chance, we were about sort of 30, 40 kilometers away from where we were meant to be. And, we got in about 12:15 after leaving at 4:00 in the afternoon.
Yeah, we were probably on that road from about 11 till midnight. And like I said, no civilization anywhere, no lights, not meeting any cars. There was no other traffic the whole 60 kilometers or whatever you estimate it was. It was midnight, no sat nav, no internet coming through to the phone. It was like we went off in another dimension. And I want to repeat, that forest was really scary looking at night. I mean, it was horrendous. I was sitting there, I'm trying not to really say anything, and I'm just kind of looking out like, where the hell are we? We are never getting out of this alive. And, I tried to kind of bring the subject up to Ben once, like, well, how long have we been on this road? And his response was not all that nice. It was kind of a, shut the hell up. And I'm trying to concentrate here. And it was tense. It was tense. And we finally got to our hotel. It wasn't really a hotel. We had little houses. They were far bigger than we expected them, but there was still no internet. There was still absolutely no, and it wasn't even one of those places, usually you get somewhere where there's no internet and it's really out in the boondocks and there's nothing around. And you'll at least see that there's some internet. It's just too weak for you to log on, or it's secured and you don't have the password, but there's something going on in the air. This was nothing. You look up on your computer and there's nothing available. Absolutely nothing. But, when we did get there, the little houses we were in were pretty nice.
Yeah, I must say, I'm not gonna, Simone did organize our trip down to Melbourne, and I think she had a bit of an ulterior motive of she wanted us to check out some places that she'd quite like to take the kids on a holiday over the next couple of however long. So, that's how we ended up, because it looked like a very nice, when the sun came up in the morning and we actually realized where we were, it was a hell of a spot, like right there, and I think it's called Snug Cove. There's whales there, I don't know, it'd be a very nice spot, but we kind of had to get going again.
And the fact that it was a nice spot, but it was on the ocean, and it was on the ocean nowhere near Melbourne. nor was the spot anywhere near a straight line between Sydney and Melbourne. So we had veered off, and the funny thing is we got up the next morning. Yeah, it was a nice place too. We got up the next morning, we drove 2.5 hours, 3. We drove 3 hours back to where we recognized where we turned off to go to that place. So 3 hours later, the next morning, like 10, noon, 1 o'clock, I don't know, something like that. We were finally at 1 o'clock the next day back on the road to Melbourne, which we had left at like 8 or 9 o'clock the night before. So we had 7 hours in at that time of
It was
driving.
an awesome place, but unfortunately we didn't get to experience it just because we had to get back on the road and drive 10 hours.
We got there at 10:30 at night, and we had to get going the next morning.
Midnight.
Yeah. So we got up, and at 1 o'clock the next day was on the road that we had left at 8 o'clock the night before or something. So that was an adventure. Definitely unlike what I've experienced in Australia before this. And the next day, what happened the next day, Ben?
We had to drive through the mountains.
Again, I hadn't checked the itinerary. I hadn't checked it. I hadn't really looked. Simone had just sent me, these are your hotels. These are nice places.
And I want to
have a good time.
And I want to add that up until this point, at this point, I had not yet actually looked at a map and didn't realize exactly where we had gone in our relationship in space and time from Melbourne. So yeah, the next day we start up. What was the first mountains that we came to?
Well, there was one. We had two options to where we were going to. I put it into the sat nav, and we had two options to get there. Both were going to take us about 10 hours, but option A was going to take us to Melbourne, and then we would have to drive 3 hours past Melbourne to where the hotel was, which I was like, well, I can't.
The second night's hotel.
The second night's hotel. I was like, well, I just thought in my head, I can't do that. We can't drive to Melbourne and have Glenn and Travis go, hey, we're here. And I'm like, guess what? No, we're not. You sit your ass back down in the van. And we're heading off. So I opted to go the other way. It was still 10 hours, and it took us over on the Snowy Mountains Highway, which, if anyone's ever driven that from start to finish, is pretty windy. It goes up into the mountains. We saw snow, saw all sorts of, again, more wildlife than I've ever seen in Australia before, with more wombats, more kangaroos, both
wild
dead
horses.
and alive, wild horses.
Yeah.
We saw parts of Australia I've never seen before, and I've lived there a long time.
Yeah. Well, we did. We went through the Great Dividing Range, and then we went through is it called the Cumberson Range or Cumberson Range or Cumberland Range? I don't know. But at one point, Ben spoke up, and this is, how many hours did we drive on Thursday?
So yesterday, it was a solid 9.
Yeah. So, about 3 or 4 hours into the trip, Ben says, and it did start to sleet in the mountains. That wasn't good. But Ben says, this is where The Man from Snowy River was filmed. And, well, that's a great movie. I actually described it as the opposite of rap music, meaning it was wholesome and good. But it's a good family movie, and a movie I really like. In fact, I'm going to watch it as soon as I get home for like the third or fourth time. But I kind of psyched me up because I was like, yeah, that's great. This is pretty cool because I love that movie. And then we actually, a little farther down from there, we started seeing signs, which Travis and I argued about, and I said they were horses. And he claimed they were unicorns. Why did you think they were unicorns, Travis?
I looked like they had horns.
Well, I explained to Travis that was ears. And it took a while, but I think we finally convinced him that there wasn't signs of jumping unicorns. It was signs of possible horses crossing the road. But we actually did see a pack of wild horses, and Ben explained that they were called Brumbies. And I remember that from the movie, but that was actually pretty cool. I wouldn't say it's worth the extra, 10, 12 hours of driving that we did, but it was cool. I'm glad I saw some Brumbies. And I'm very glad. So,
what's that town we ended up staying at? Echuca?
That's it, yes.
Yeah.
So we stayed in Echuca. So if you guys want to look up on a map, we drove from Sydney to Eden to Echuca to Melbourne.
Yeah. And Echuca was, earlier in the day, Ben realizing how far we were out of our way and how far Echuca was out of our way, called the lady that owned the hotel in Echuca that we were booked at, and tried to reason with her and see if we could get out of staying there, or maybe find another place closer to Melbourne so we could just drive straight to Melbourne. And what did she say to you, Ben?
I was a little bit frazzled, and she said to me that it was the 3 Ps that we had done, and I questioned. I said, "Well, what are the 3 Ps?" And she said, "Well, it's piss poor planning," which to someone I was already not very happy to have somebody I've never met in my life refer to my wife's planning as piss poor. It was it was an interesting little phone call, that one.
Yeah, well, that lady sucked anyways, but
But when we got to Echuca, she rang earlier. She rang at about 5:00, maybe 5:30, to find out how we were going, and I told her where we were, and she said, "Oh, you've still got hours to go yet." And I said, "Well, fuck you."
Yeah, it's like he had told her earlier that we're going to have a hard time getting there, but on time. But so the funny thing is, we find this place, which what was the name of the place in Echuca? Something I don't know, but we found the place, and the door was like a little door on like a storefront on like a main street or something. And so we walk in, and it looks like we're in like a dining room, like where people are having coffee or whatever. And there's 2, ladies sitting at one of the tables sipping coffee out of fancy teacups. I notice little things like that. But they're sitting there, and there's this large woman that kind of turned her faces like I would have thought she was the server. And I don't remember exactly what she said, but it was kind of on the line. We're coming through this little thin wooden door with our bag and suitcase and everything. And she says, like, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "I'm standing there. I feel like I'm in a dining room." And there's these 2 ladies sipping tea that are like looking at me like, "Who the hell are you? And what are you doing here?" There's a lady that just standing there like, literally, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, well, the first thought that ran through my mind is I came in the wrong door. This is obviously not a hotel, And I'm like, frankly, I don't know what I'm doing here, And then Ben came in, and Ben's like, we're here. She's like, "Oh, are you the one I talked to earlier?" And she looked like she was completely stumped that there were 3 of us sitting there. And well, to tell you the truth, the whole situation made me extremely uncomfortable because I thought I was like in somebody's dining room. And she's like, very unwelcoming, and, "What are you doing here?" And then she's like, so she looks at all 3 of us. She's like, "3 boys?" And I was really like not talking at that point, I'm like, "I don't know. Yeah, we're 3 boys, And, she's like, talks to Ben, and she's like, "Well, I only have 1 room with 1 single bed. I thought it was you and your wife." And at that point, I turned and headed out the door. Travis turns around. We're heading out. Ben did as close as I've ever seen to putting his head in his hands and dropping to his knees. I mean, actually, he dropped to like a stool, but the rest of us true and accurate. We all 3 were just. Words just can't describe it,
Well,
whatever.
Glenn didn't say a word up to this point, so the lady says, "Do you speak English?"
yeah. Well, I think she asked both of us, maybe. I don't know. It may have just been me, but we weren't really talking. We were kind of quiet. Ben was the dude in charge and whatever, but she's like, "Do you speak English?" I should have said no. There's little things like that if you could do over in your life, you do, and make it even funnier. But I just was like, yeah, we speak English. And instead, I should have said, "No, I only speak Polish," or something like that. It would have been funny. But Ben, I guess you guys got it worked out, and we ended up with 3 rooms.
Well, yeah, I was a couple of hours before that when we were sitting there driving, and it was the second day of driving for 10 hours. And we said you're at that point where you don't know whether to laugh or cry, and I was just trying to keep laughing
because the tears were coming.
The tears weren't far off. And when we walked in, this lady was like, "What the hell are you doing here?" And she goes, 3 boys, 1 room. I was just about ready.
Not to mention,
crack.
The room was called the Seductive Suite.
I got my room first when I got it figured out that we actually needed 3 rooms. And she walks in to lead me into my room, and she says, "Oh, you got the seduction room. You'll notice that the lighting is rather dim." And I'm like, "Yeah," and like the thing you put the clothes in and all that crap, everything's painted red. The walls are like reddish brown, and there's a big red comforter on the bed, and there's candles, and you turn the lights on full blast, and they go up very, very dim, so you can barely see yourself walk. So I got to spend the night in fireplace. Yeah, I got
plunger coffee, very classy.
Yeah, very classy with the coffee. But I had to spend the night in the seduction room.
But that's the one that they had ready to go. So
that was meant for Ben and Simone.
Yeah, that was meant for Ben and Simone, because Simone had caught up there and made the reservation. So, anyways, we ended out with 3 rooms, but it was like this Victorian mansion house type thing on the river. So we all ended out in our own rooms that were meant for couples. So they all had like these wine glasses and fireplaces and like sex toys and shit like that. And we're like, this is just really awkward. So yeah, Simone was sending us on like Ben, check out Eden. Should we go to Eden or should we go to Echuca? And I think that's obviously a place you should go without the kids.
Yeah, they both were okay in their different ways. One's kid friendly, one's not.
You had some very. I was dying with like I was just reaching the point of I couldn't laugh anymore when you were sitting in that room and we saw your dressing gown that they gave you as well. That was some silk kimono.
Yeah, I had a silk kimono ready to go. I didn't actually use it, but I actually thought when I got in there and they said this is a seduction room and I saw the color scheme and the lighting and everything, I actually thought that I was going to get that silk kimono on and like get under the covers, in the bed and kind of lay there and have one of the guys take a picture of the seduction room. But sadly to say, I didn't do it, But one of those things you think about and didn't.
Well, it was like so. All right, this lady was fucking insane. First of all, but she was trying to be like the nicest person in the world.
And that's Travis trying to be nice.
So she's in the room. And for some reason, they didn't even like clean Ben's bathroom first, so they had to like clean his bed. So we're all hanging out in Glenn's room, and this lady like she won't freaking leave, and she's like we weren't talking that much, so like she won't take a hint, So what did you say earlier? It's like you were trying to give her a hint, but by not saying anything, and then she just like keeps talking.
Yeah, I mean, when 3 people are sitting there and you're all kind of not say anything, and this lady's just standing in the middle of your motel room, you think she'll be like, "Oh, so okay, well, I'll go downstairs. You guys obviously want to get to sleep." She just stood there talking to us about inane things. I don't know.
Well, then she's trying to
told us about what kind of dog she has and everything.
She's trying to plug in something. So this chick's got hips wider than Texas, and she's just she's freaking huge, and she's bent over like with her ass sticking up, and me and Ben just can't stop laughing because like she's got the biggest ass I've ever seen in my entire life. 5 foot tall, 5 foot wide.
She couldn't get the light on, so she was asking me how to turn the light on. And I'm like, "Lady, I have no freaking clue." And it was one of those things that just her like attitude and her persona, and you can't get a real feel for it unless you were there. But it was one of those things. It's just so funny, and not funny in a good way, but funny in a, like Ben said, you're either going to laugh or you're going to cry. And we didn't cry. Ben might have had a tear or two there for a bit, but we managed to not cry. And we ended up getting through the night. They've got Ben's room cleaned and everything, and we got through it. We got through it.
It was cold as.
Oh, it was freezing cold too. They don't turn the heater on.
Well, they had these electric blankets, and I'm like, I've never used one of those in my life. What am I going to use that for? But I figured it out pretty quick because.
And you needed it too.
Yeah, I turned that thing up to full blast, and I was still freezing.
Yeah. Yeah, I found out the next morning that they actually did have an electric heater within the bathroom, so that kind of saved me. But, the place was freezing cold. So then the next morning, the lady had said, are you staying for breakfast? And we're like, well, breakfast is included in the price. So, we're going to eat breakfast. And so she took quite, a while explaining that when you come down to breakfast is served from 8:30 on. You come down to breakfast, you go in this one room, and you get your cereal, your fruit, your coffee, your orange juice, or whatever. And you come out into the dining room and you sit, and then somebody will be around to take your order if you want any hot food. And so, I was actually a little hungry. And another odd thing is that she brought us each a bottle of milk to put in the fridge in the room for the night. Well, I'm not going to say no to a free bottle of milk. So I'm like, before I went to bed, it had been a while since we ate supper, so I was a little hungry. And so they had a little cookie cracker thing sitting there by the coffee machine, obviously for in the morning. So I went and drank the milk, ate the little cookie, was able to, go to sleep. But I was hungry, and so the next morning when I woke up about 7:30 or so, I was like, 8:30 can't come soon enough. I fooled around a little bit, and I was down, to breakfast right at 8:30.
It wasn't the seduction room after all.
No. There was no seduction going on in there. I was shivering cold under the blankets, and so I was down there to eat breakfast at 8:30 sharp, and Travis and Ben were down there just a little bit later, but she wasn't really happy to see me at 8:30. It was kind of like, you're cutting it pretty close, dude. I said 8:30 on, with the emphasis on, we come back at 9. She didn't actually say that, but she was still putting out the stuff. And I got, the only thing to eat at that point was like a bowl of cereal. So I got some cereal and a cup of coffee and went and sat down. And, first thing when she saw me sitting down over there, she started moving other tables closer to me and like putting silverware and plates out for like other people. And, I was kind of like, well, I kind of want to sit by myself, but then she said something about the other guys, and I'm like, I don't think they're going to be down right now. They're going to come down whenever they wake up. And so that kind of miffed her. It's just the type of woman that, if you said something that she didn't like, she wasn't going to take it gracefully. She was going to show you. She may not say, well, fuck you or whatever, but she was definitely going to have an attitude. She had a little attitude about that. And then she came back to take my order. And, it wasn't like an all-free hot breakfast. Most of the things, like if you wanted pancakes, you wanted sausages or whatever, you had to pay for them. But there were a few things on the menu that were free or that came with the room. One of the things was eggs and bacon. And so, I ordered eggs and bacon, and then she gave me a hassle about the toast. She's like, what kind of toast you want? And I was just like, I was cold. I was cranky. They had the friggin' door open on the front of the little restaurant that we were in, and it was cold outside. It was definitely cold outside. And it was breezy and it was cold in there, and I'm sitting there, I'm shivering practically, and I'm cranky, and I, whatever. I'm like, whatever you have. And she's like, well, we have white, we have whole wheat, and we have some kind of wheat berry or something. And I'm like, I'll just take the wheat. And she's like, do you mean whole wheat? Lady, at this point, I don't even care if I get toast. Just bring me something. I said, yeah, whole wheat. Was there any other kind of wheat toast rather than whole wheat?
So. I think she was just fucking with you.
Yeah, well, that's pretty likely, actually. But, I ate, and, I ate the toast and the bacon, and then at that point, honestly, she took about 20 minutes to bring the hot food. Way longer than I wanted to sit there, because as I said, I was cold. And, so I took like one bite of the eggs, and I was like, you know what? At this point, I've had a bowl of cereal, I've had, toast and bacon and whatever, and I'm actually full, and I'm cold as shit, and I want to go back up and crawl under my covers again in my room. And, so I just ate like one bite of the eggs, and, so evidently, what did she say when the guys came down like 5 minutes after I left?
Yeah, I came down, I think about 9 o'clock, just after 9, so I must have just missed you. And, I came down, and Travis was being served. He looked kind of concerned because the lady was serving him, and I don't know what she was saying to him, but I came down and went to sit down, the first thing she said was, I think she referred to you as George. I think she said George didn't like the eggs. I was like, I don't know who you're talking about. And I said, oh, Glenn. He goes, yeah, he didn't like the eggs. And I was like, okay, well, I guess that's not really that big a deal. But she kept on and on and on about you not liking these eggs. She goes, well, they're fucking free range and they're a certain size. And so that carried on. And then I got into trouble, because I sat down on the table next to Travis because they're very small tables. And I thought, well, we're here at this, you in the seduction room. I'm not going to go down and sit opposite Travis at this restaurant. And, so I figured I'd go and sit in there. So I got in trouble for that. She told me I needed to come and sit down next to Travis. So I got up and moved. And then within 2 minutes of sitting there, I thought, this is stupid. So I moved back over and sat down. But yeah, we got our bacon and eggs. You got in trouble you got told to go and have something healthy, didn't you?
Oh, well, this is kind of funny because in one room they had all the cold stuff, the dry food, like the cereals and basically like bread and orange juice. And they actually did brewed coffee, like regular coffee, so that was actually a positive thing about this. But then so I just sat down and I was like, hey, I want to, let me get 3 eggs and 5 pieces of bacon. And then she's like, aren't you going to have any of the healthy stuff? And I was like, what, you mean the stuff in the other room? And she was like, yeah. I was like, well, bacon and eggs are more healthy than that stuff. And then she was like, man. And then walked out.
Yeah.
Among other things, she was trying to tell me how the U.S. government was supposed to run and all this other stuff. So screw that lady. But
yeah, that was the whole. It just I can look back on it and kind of smile now, but at the time, considering that we had just drove 18, 19 hours in 2 days, and we were all tired, we were all frazzled, and there was some frustration to click it in. I mean, it was like we should have been here yesterday, et cetera, et cetera. But it was just quite the experience. I have never met a woman quite like that one. I mean, especially not in a establishment that caters to customers. It was a very odd thing, but we did. This is supposed to be this town is supposed to be the steamboat capital of Australia, and so we did take a short walk past the riverboats. There was also evidently a quite famous whorehouse right there on the property. And that was evidently a tourist attraction. We took a couple pictures and we walked down the road to see the steamboats. And, all the advertisements and all the whatever about this place in this town, it was very prominently displayed. The steamboat capital, see the steamboats, et cetera, et cetera. And so we found that there was one platform where you could get a big old platform and you could see the steamboats, but they charged. If you didn't want to pay, you had to go stand on this tiny little bitty platform coming out of the edge of the back of the back of the little shop or whatever. And we didn't want to pay, and so we stood. We got to see,
they're like little canoes.
Well, they were a little bigger than canoes, but I happen to know somebody that has a bigger boat than that. Brad has on Lake Wiley, which isn't the biggest lake in the world. So I saw, we get to see the steamboat capital of the country, we get to see a couple of steamboats that are only a little less small than Brad's boat. So it was, it was an experience, it was definitely an experience.
A couple neat stores. There was a town with some saloons, 1890s looking, I don't know, if you're back in a Western movie or something.
And there was a little woodworking shop that had a lot of the same wood lathe and belt-driven bandsaw and things that I remember my grandfather having when I was young. So it was kind of cool to see some of that stuff. But all in all, it probably was not quite the tourist attraction that we expected or thought that it might be on the way down there.
But you're gonna have a great time taking Simone to the seduction suite in the River Gallery Inn.
It was like they'd just taken everything and just put ye old in front of it, like it was ye old brothel and the ye old fudge shop, and it was I think you could knock it over in a day. If you were there for a whole day, you wouldn't have much else to see. There'd be no point. A weekend would be too long.
Yeah. So it was quite the. I'm going to say it was the most unique travel experience of my life, probably. And we did see a lot of stuff. We did see some cool stuff. We saw the spookiest road I've ever been down. We saw the mountains of Australia complete with snow. We saw brumbies, wild horses. We saw some interesting countryside, and it was overall kind of cool. But we did have two very wild experiences with accommodations for the night.
What else did we saw? So Australia's kind of fascinated with big things. So they have the big banana, the big cherry. What's the other two that we saw?
The big trout.
We saw the big trout.
And we saw the big merino.
Merino, which is kind of like a sheep or a ram or something.
Yeah.
And,
so we saw that at Goulburn.
What other ones are there? There's a couple.
There's
more.
loads. I think so,
I should add though that these folks are really, really proud of these things. The big banana is advertised widely around where the big banana is, and it's a big banana. It's a what do you think they made the big banana out of?
Ben's got steam coming out of his ears. He hates it when we say banana. So, hey Ben, what do you hear when we say banana?
I think we've done this one. Yeah, I think you guys are trying to tone it down a little bit because you know I'm listening for when you scream banana. You're definitely toning it down a little bit.
Don't.
What do you say?
Banana.
Yeah, so you're toning it down.
How do you say it?
It's just, the big banana is... It's everyone who comes... If you drive up the Pacific Highway, you're going to see the big banana. It's there, and it's exactly as it sounds. It's a
you gotta say banana the way you think we say banana.
It's exactly as it sounds. It's a big banana.
Oh, the big trout was pretty cool though. It was about a 9-foot tall trout. It was painted correct, and it's worth the drive. It's worth coming to Australia, frankly, to see the big banana and the big trout.
The big merino is huge. That thing we stopped at.
Yeah.
We had to go and get you a second dinner. You weren't happy with the first one. We had to go and get you a second one.
Yeah, I don't know. They had like these little tiny sandwich things, and I was like, all right, we gotta go do something else.
Travis just really wanted to go to McDonald's again.
No, again. No, that was the first time they made me McDonald's, and I wanted to kill somebody. But so we've had a lot of seminars so far. Tomorrow and Sunday is our last one. And how many PRs do you think people have set? There's at least 200. 200 PRs at these seminars.
Judging by the amount of people we've had, the percentage of people that hit PRs, if we haven't, I'd say by the end of tomorrow would be 200. It depends are you talking, because a lot of people would set, are you saying each person, or are we setting if a person says a PR snatch and a PR clean, that counts as four?
That's got to count for two, I think, because they're going for the biggest, most impressive number possible.
Easily 200 to 300.
Yeah, I mean, because a lot of people hit like 4 snatch PRs, and then, they hit like 2 clean jerk PRs. So I'm talking total, but regardless, I mean, that's still a lot of PRs over the course of 3 weeks. There's been like 200 PRs. So it's kind of amazing when you look at the big picture, like how many kilos have been added to people's total. I mean, 200 PRs, that's at least 200 kilos. So
it's really good to see. I mean, this is the second year we ran these. I mean, last year, the standard, I don't know if you'll agree with it, I think the standard of people down here is a lot higher. I think these seminars have happened, and there's been some from other people, and the whole Olympic weightlifting thing now. I mean, 95% of the people that come to these things are CrossFitters, and it's sort of broken it down, and the whole scariness about Olympic lifting doesn't seem to be there anymore. It's not like this mythical thing that no one has any idea how to do properly, and it's just, just go down there, do a deadlift, and then shrug and do a front squat. It's definitely the standards have come way up. Yeah,
it's one thing, I've seen CrossFitters weightlifting since, 2007, 8, whatever, in the U.S., and it's a huge amount of difference and change. But it's funny how in Australia it's easier to see because it's 1 year to the next. And I would agree that overall the standard of lifting in Australia is within CrossFit is far above where it was just a year ago.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't even say that. I mean, we had like some good lifters come and make PRs. Like we had one of the top CrossFitters in the country here, Ben Gerard, came and made a PRs on both snatch and clean. 77, he did 115, 156 at the seminar. And what was
Lindsay? Is it Beisner?
Yeah,
Beister.
he snatched 132 at the seminar. I think he's a 94 kilo lifter.
He's a legit good lifter too.
Yeah, he's got very good technique. He just started lifting only, and like we mentioned him about Gold Coast weightlifting. But point being, it's not like people snatching 50 kilos and making a 51 kilo PR. It's, legitimate good PRs, and the standard of lifter there is good.
Yeah.
And we had this 69 kilo national champ come to the last one.
Yeah, and he actually made PRs and you didn't even know it.
Yeah, well, because it's ironic that some of the gyms here have pound plates because they're CrossFits, and they go off some of the main site wads, so they use pounds plates. And he was counting them by color, so he thought it was 110, and he snatched like 112.5, which was a PR, and he was missing 117, which he thought was like 115, which would have been like a huge PR, obviously. So I think his PR coming in was like 112, and he made like 112.5. And then the clean, he made 137.5, and his PR before that was 130. So, I mean, it's a big increase in his total.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice to have not just beginners coming to the seminars, but actually some pretty good quality lifters and doing quite well. It's fun to see those guys lift in with everybody else for sure.
Yeah, we also had a lot of beginners, which people who'd never lifted before, and it was kind of funny. They were like, I wasn't sure if I should come to the seminar because I don't think I was ready yet. And I was like, now's the time to learn correctly. You don't want to be lifting for another year and then come to the seminar when you have all these bad habits. So
yeah. And speaking of good lifting, you've lifted pretty well when you were down here. The last two seminars you did 145, 185, and 143, 184. So, and that was just odd weights because of pound plates again. But Travis has had pretty good training down here actually, and made some good lifts in the seminars.
It's been good because of all this driving. I had a few days off, and so hopefully tomorrow I can hit some big lifts and then transition time zones again and be ready to train for Worlds. I think it'll be really good to train with the team, just because I've been training on my own, and sometimes like when you've been training with the team for a long time, you kind of get bored with it. You're training with the same people all the time. Then being out here, it's been great because we've been traveling around. But at this point, I'm kind of like missing the team and ready to get back and train hard with them. So it should be good.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, those are the chronicles of our last 2 days in Australia. A lot has happened, more than a normal 2 days, and it's been fun.